Trevor Walsh had seen a lot of strange things in his 5 years running cargo between stations, but he had never seen anything quite like this. The auction hall in the lower decks of Nexus Station smelled like rust and desperation. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species crowded around a raised platform where a Kryn auctioneer barked prices in 3 languages at once. Trevor should have been halfway to the docking bay by now. His cargo run was done. His credits were secured. All he needed to do was refuel and leave this miserable station behind. But something made him stop when he passed the auction hall entrance. Something made him look. On the platform stood a girl. She was Valith, one of those bird-like aliens from the Outer Reach colonies. Her feathers were a soft gray-blue color, and her large eyes watched the crowd with a strange mixture of fear and acceptance. She kept her wings folded tight against her back. Trevor noticed her hands were shaking. The auctioneer rattled off her details like she was cargo. 15 years of contract labor. Clean record. Basic education. Skills in navigation and stellar cartography. Starting bid at 2,000 credits. Trevor felt his stomach twist. He knew what indentured contracts meant. He had hauled enough cargo to stations where contract workers loaded his ship in silence, their eyes empty. 15 years might as well be a lifetime. By the time this girl finished her term, she would be a different person. Maybe a broken person. The bidding climbed quickly. 3,000. 4,000. Trevor watched as a Thorian merchant raised his paddle, his 3 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. 5,000 credits. The auctioneer began the countdown. Trevor did not think. He just acted. His hand shot up. 6,000. The crowd turned to look at him. The Thorian merchant clicked his mandibles in annoyance and raised his paddle again. 7,000. Trevor thought about his cargo profit sitting in his account. He thought about the repairs his ship needed. He thought about the fuel costs for his next 3 runs. Then he looked at the girl on the platform again. Her eyes had found his face in the crowd. There was no hope in them. Just curiosity. Like she was wondering why a human would bid on a Valith contract. 10,000, Trevor said. His voice came out louder than he meant it to. The crowd murmured. The Thorian merchant stared at Trevor for a long moment, then lowered his paddle with a disgusted gesture. The auctioneer grinned, showing too many teeth. 10,000 credits to the human. Going once, going twice, sold. Trevor felt numb as he made his way to the payment terminal. 10,000 credits. That was almost everything he had earned from this run. He would have just enough left for fuel and basic supplies. No repairs. No upgrades. No safety margin if something went wrong on his next haul. The transaction processed. A data chip dropped into the collection slot. Trevor picked it up and stared at it. This tiny piece of plastic now held the contract that controlled another being's life for the next 15 years. A handler brought the girl to him. Up close, Trevor could see she was young. Maybe 20 in human years, though he was not sure how Valith aged. Her feathers looked dull, like she had not been eating well. Her wing feathers had been clipped short. Contract workers were always clipped. It kept them from flying away. Name's Lyra, the handler said, shoving a data pad at Trevor. Sign here for transfer of ownership. She's your problem now. Trevor hated that word. Ownership. He signed anyway. The handler left. Trevor and Lyra stood in the corridor outside the auction hall, surrounded by the noise and crowd of the station. Neither of them spoke for a moment. I have a ship 2 decks up, Trevor finally said. You can stay there tonight. Get some rest. Get some food. Tomorrow morning I'll give you enough credits to disappear. Find somewhere safe. Start over. Lyra's head tilted to the side. It was a Valith gesture he did not understand. You paid 10,000 credits to free me for one night? I paid 10,000 credits because watching you get sold to that Thorian made me sick, Trevor said. He started walking toward the lift. Come on. This station gets worse after dark. Lyra followed him. Her steps were quiet. Trevor noticed she kept her wings tucked so tight against her body that they barely moved when she walked. They rode the lift in silence. Trevor's ship, the Wandering Star, was not much to look at. It was a small cargo hauler with room for 1 crew member and maybe a passenger if they did not mind tight quarters. But it was clean and it was his. He showed Lyra to the small passenger cabin. There's a food dispenser in the common area. Water in the wall unit. Door locks from the inside if you want privacy. Lyra stood in the doorway looking at the small room like it was a palace. Why are you doing this? Because it's the right thing to do, Trevor said. He started to leave then stopped. Get some rest. We'll figure out the details in the morning. But Lyra did not move. Her large eyes fixed on his face. It won't work. Trevor turned back. What won't work? giving me credits and letting me run. Lyra's voice was soft but steady. The syndicate that holds my family's debt will find me. And when they do, they will take everything from my family as punishment. My mother, my father, my 2 younger brothers. The debt collectors don't care about one escaped worker. They care about making examples. Trevor felt cold. Your family? I thought you were just paying off your own debts. I was sold to pay for my father's medical treatment, Lyra said. He got sick working in the lithium mines. The company doctors charged more than we could ever afford. The syndicate offered a deal. 15 years of my labor in exchange for his treatment and my family's survival. If I run, the deal is broken. They will take our home. They will take everything. They might even take my brothers for new contracts. Trevor leaned against the doorframe. His stupid plan was falling apart before it even started. So what are you saying? I should just keep the contract? Keep you as a worker? I am saying that your kindness will not save me, Lyra said. And it might kill my family. The only way out is to complete the contract term or pay the full contract price. 10,000 credits was just for one night's transfer. The full 15-year contract costs 150,000 credits. Trevor did a quick calculation in his head. 150,000 credits. He would need 3 years of perfect cargo runs with no emergencies and no expenses to save that much. Maybe 4 years. I don't have that kind of money, Trevor said quietly. I know, Lyra said. Nobody does. That's how the system works. That's why people like me never get free. They stood there in the narrow corridor of the ship, a human cargo hauler and a Veilith girl bound by chains that money had forged. Outside, Nexus Station hummed with the noise of 1,000 ships coming and going. Inside, everything was very quiet. Trevor looked at the data chip in his hand. One night. That was all he had bought. One night before he had to send her back into that system. One night before everything went back to the way it was. Unless he found another way. Trevor did not sleep that night. He sat in the pilot's chair of the Wandering Star, staring at the data chip that held Lyra's contract. The station lights flickered through the viewport, casting strange shadows across the cockpit. His mind kept running the same calculation over and over. 150,000 credits. 3 or 4 years of perfect runs. Maybe longer. He pulled up the contract details on his console. The legal language was dense and complicated, written in the standard galactic trade format that made everything sound official and final. But the meaning was clear enough. Lyra belonged to the Viridian Syndicate for 15 years. Any breach of contract would result in immediate seizure of collateral assets. In this case, the collateral was her family's home, property, and future earnings. There was a clause near the bottom that made Trevor's blood run cold. If the contracted worker escaped or died before completion of term, the syndicate had the legal right to claim replacement workers from the immediate family. Her younger brothers. The system was designed to be unbreakable. Trevor heard soft footsteps behind him. Lyra stood in the doorway between the cockpit and the common area. She had not changed her clothes. She probably had no other clothes. You should be sleeping, Trevor said. So should you. Lyra moved into the cockpit and sat in the navigator's seat. She looked at the console where the contract details glowed. You're trying to find a way out. There's always a way out, Trevor said. But even as he said it, he knew it sounded hollow. Lyra's feathers rustled slightly. It was the first time he had seen her move her wings even a little. The Viridian Syndicate has been running debt contracts for 40 years. They have lawyers. They have enforcers. They have connections in every major station between here and the core worlds. People have tried to break their contracts before. It never ends well. Trevor leaned back in his chair. What happens when your 15 years are up? Do they actually let you go? If you survive the 15 years, yes. Lyra looked out the viewport at the endless stream of ships moving through the station's traffic lanes. Most people don't survive unchanged. The work is hard. The conditions are worse. You become something else. Something smaller. Trevor thought about the contract workers he had seen over the years. The way they moved through their tasks like machines. The way they never looked anyone in the eye. Lyra was different. She still had light in her eyes. Still had hope somewhere inside her, even if she would not admit it. You said the full contract price is 150,000 credits, Trevor said slowly. What if I could get that money? Lyra turned to look at him. You can't. You're a single ship cargo hauler. No offense, but I saw your ship's registration when we boarded. The Wandering Star is 15 years old and barely holds a Class C rating. You probably make 30 to 40,000 credits a year if you're lucky. 42,000 last year, Trevor said. But you're right. I don't have 150,000 credits sitting in an account somewhere. Then what are you thinking? Trevor pulled up his asset list on a secondary screen. The Wandering Star. His navigation equipment. His emergency supplies. His trade licenses. His entire life reduced to a column of numbers. I'm thinking I could sell everything, Trevor said. The ship is old but it runs. I could get maybe 70,000 for it if I find the right buyer. I've got equipment worth another 10,000. That's 80,000 total. Lyra shook her head. That's not even close to 150,000. And if you sell your ship, how will you make money? How will you live? I'm not finished, Trevor said. He opened another screen. I've got trade contacts on 6 stations. People who owe me favors. If I liquidate my cargo contracts and call in every debt, I could probably scrape together another 20,000. That puts me at 100,000. Still 50,000 short. Trevor nodded. I know. But the syndicate allows payment plans for contract buyouts. I checked the legal terms. If I put down 100,000 as a down payment, I can finance the remaining 50,000 over 2 years at 12% interest. Lyra stared at him. Her large eyes were very wide. You're serious? You're actually calculating how to buy my contract. I'm calculating how to buy your freedom, Trevor corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Lyra's voice was quiet. If you buy my contract and then give me my freedom, what do you get? You'll have nothing. No ship. No money. No way to make a living. You'll destroy your entire life for someone you met 6 hours ago. Trevor had been asking himself the same question all night. The smart thing to do was to give Lyra a few hundred credits in the morning and wish her luck. Send her back to the syndicate. Forget this whole night ever happened. Go back to running cargo and minding his own business. But every time he tried to convince himself to do the smart thing, he remembered her standing on that auction platform. He remembered her shaking hands and her clipped wings. He remembered the Thorian merchant's satisfied expression. What if I don't just buy your freedom? Trevor said. What if I hire you? Lyra blinked. What? You said you have skills in navigation and stellar cartography. Those are valuable. I need a navigator. If I buy out your contract and hire you as a legitimate crew member, you work off the debt as a partner, not as property. We split the profits. You earn real money. You're free but you're also employed. You won't have a ship, Lyra pointed out. You just said you'd have to sell the Wandering Star. Trevor thought for a moment. What if I don't sell the whole ship? What if I sell a share of it? Make you a part owner. That way we both have stake in making this work. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Outside, a massive cargo freighter drifted past the viewport, its running lights blinking in the darkness. Why? Lyra finally asked. Why would you do this? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. In 24 hours, I'll be gone and you'll never see me again. This makes no sense. Trevor turned to face her directly. You're right. It makes no sense. It's bad business. It's probably the stupidest decision I'll ever make. But I watched them sell you like you were cargo and I can't stop thinking about it. I can't just walk away knowing you'll spend 15 years being treated like property. I can't do it. Lyra's feathers were trembling now. Trevor realized she was trying not to cry. He had read somewhere that Valith did not cry the way humans did, but they showed emotion through their feathers. If you do this, Lyra said slowly, you'll have almost nothing left. You'll be starting over from zero. Maybe worse than zero because of the debt. I'll have a ship, Trevor said. I'll have a skilled navigator. And I'll have a clear conscience. That's more than a lot of people have. The syndicate will make this difficult. They'll want verification. They'll want proof of funds. They'll try to find ways to back out of the deal. Then we'll fight them on every point, Trevor said. I've dealt with bureaucrats before. I can be stubborn when I need to be. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She extended her wings slightly and touched his shoulder with the edge of it. It was the lightest touch, barely there at all. In Valith culture, she said softly, when someone saves a life, we say they carry a piece of that person's song. I don't know if humans understand that. But you should know that if you do this, you'll carry my song forever. And I'll carry yours. Trevor did not entirely understand what that meant, but he understood the weight behind it. He nodded. Then we'd better get started, he said. The syndicate office opens in 4 hours. We need to have all the paperwork ready. The paperwork took 3 days. The Viridian syndicate made every step as difficult as possible, demanding verification of funds, reviewing asset transfers and questioning every line of the contract buyout. But Trevor had learned to be patient during his years hauling cargo through bureaucratic nightmares. He answered every question. He provided every document. He refused to give them any reason to deny the deal. On the third day, the syndicate officer finally stamped the final approval. Lyra's contract was transferred completely. She was no longer property of the Viridian Syndicate. The data chip that had controlled her life for the past 2 years was voided and destroyed. Trevor watched Lyra's face as the officer confirmed the transfer. She did not smile. She did not cry. She just stood very still, like she was afraid to believe it was real. They left the syndicate office and walked back to the ship in silence. Trevor had exactly 800 credits left in his account. The Wandering Star was now co-owned between him and Lyra, though she had contributed nothing but her future labor. His cargo contracts were cancelled. His emergency fund was gone. He had never been this broke in his entire adult life. But when he looked at Lyra walking beside him, her clipped wings held a little higher than before, he found he did not regret it. The first cargo run as partners was a disaster. Trevor had taken a rush job hauling medical supplies to a mining colony in the Serpens sector. The pay was decent, but the route was tricky, threading through an asteroid field that most pilots avoided. Lyra sat in the navigator's seat, studying the stellar charts with an intensity that made Trevor nervous. She had not said much since they left Nexus Station. Every time Trevor tried to make conversation, she gave short answers and returned to her work. "There's a standard route that adds 6 hours but avoids the worst of the asteroids," Trevor said, pointing to the navigation display. "Most haulers use that." Lyra shook her head. "There's a better way. The asteroid drift pattern creates temporary gaps every 43 minutes. If we time it right, we can cut through the field directly and save 4 hours. Trevor looked at the field on the display. It was dense with rocks, some as large as small moons. "That's risky. One miscalculation and we're debris." "I don't miscalculate," Lyra said quietly. There was something in her voice. Not arrogance. Just certainty. Trevor decided to trust her. "All right. Plot the course." Lyra's fingers moved across the navigation console with practiced speed. Numbers and trajectories filled the screens. Trevor watched her work and realized she was not just good at this. She was exceptional. Her calculations accounted for gravitational drift, rotation patterns, and micro-variations in the asteroid movements that Trevor would never have noticed. "Ready," Lyra said. "Engage main thrusters on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark." Trevor fired the thrusters. The Wandering Star surged forward into the asteroid field. Rocks the size of buildings drifted past the viewport, close enough to touch. Trevor's hands were tight on the controls, ready to adjust course at any second. "Left thruster, 2-second burst," Lyra said calmly. Trevor obeyed. The ship shifted smoothly between 2 massive asteroids. Main thrust, 70% power. They accelerated through a gap that looked impossibly narrow. Trevor could hear smaller rocks pinging off the hull shields. Right thruster, 1 second. Now cut main power and drift. Trevor killed the main engines. The ship glided silently through the thickest part of the field, carried by momentum and Lyra's perfect calculations. All around them, asteroids tumbled and spun in their ancient dance. One wrong move would have smashed them to pieces. Then they were through. Clear space opened up ahead. Trevor let out a breath he did not know he had been holding. 4 hours saved, Lyra said. She still did not smile, but there was something like satisfaction in her voice. Trevor looked at her with new respect. "Where did you learn to navigate like that?" "My father was a pilot before he got sick," Lyra said. "He taught me to read stellar drift patterns when I was young. Said it was in our blood. Valith were navigating by stars before we ever left our home world." It was the most personal thing she had shared since they left Nexus Station. Trevor wanted to ask more questions, but Lyra had already turned back to her charts. The moment of openness closed. The weeks that followed fell into an uneasy rhythm. Trevor took cargo jobs. Lyra plotted the courses. They split the profits exactly in half as agreed. But there was a wall between them that neither seemed able to cross. Trevor tried to be friendly. He made extra food and left it in the common area. He asked about Valith culture. He offered to teach her human card games during their long jumps through hyperspace. Lyra accepted the food with quiet thanks, answered his questions with brief facts, and politely declined the games. She was not rude. She was just distant. Like she was still waiting for the other shoe to drop. Still expecting Trevor to reveal that this partnership was just another kind of cage. Their second month together brought a job that changed things. A corporate client needed sensitive data cores transported from a research station to a secure facility 3 systems away. The pay was excellent, but the route went through the Helix Nebula, a region known for ion storms and pirates. We should turn this down, Trevor said, looking at the contract. Too much risk. Lyra studied the route for a long moment. I can get us through the nebula. The ion storms follow predictable cycles. If we time our jump windows correctly, we avoid the worst of it. And the pirates? Pirates don't patrol the deep nebula. Too dangerous for them too. They stick to the outer edges where they can escape quickly. Trevor was not convinced, but the money was too good to pass up. They were still paying down the debt from Lyra's contract buyout. All right. But if things get bad, we abort. Agreed. Agreed, Lyra said. The Helix Nebula was beautiful and terrifying. Clouds of ionized gas glowed in shades of purple and blue, stretching for millions of kilometers in every direction. Sensor readings were unreliable. Navigation was mostly guesswork and instinct. Except Lyra did not guess. She calculated. She tracked the ion density fluctuations and predicted storm formations hours before they appeared. She found safe pockets in the chaos where they could pause and let their shields recharge. On the third day in the nebula, a massive ion storm formed directly in their path. Trevor saw it on the sensors and felt his stomach drop. The storm was bigger than anything they had encountered so far. It would overload their shields in minutes if they tried to push through. We need to go around, Trevor said. Add another day to the trip. Lyra shook her head. She was studying her navigation charts with fierce concentration. There's a gap. Right through the center of the storm. A calm zone where the ion flows create a natural shield. That's impossible. Storms don't work that way. This one does. Look at the density readings. See how they spiral inward? That creates a dead zone in the center. Like the eye of a hurricane. Trevor looked at the data. She was right. There was a narrow corridor through the storm center where the ion density dropped almost to zero. But reaching it meant flying through the storm wall first. This is insane, Trevor said. This is physics, Lyra replied. Do you trust me? Trevor realized that was the real question. Not whether the physics worked, but whether he trusted his partner to get them through alive. He thought about the asteroid field. He thought about all the successful runs they had made. He thought about the way Lyra studied her charts like they contained secrets no one else could read. I trust you, Trevor said. They dove into the storm. The ship shook violently as ion particles bombarded the shields. Alarms screamed. The lights flickered. Trevor held the course steady while Lyra called out micro-adjustments, guiding them through the chaos with absolute precision. Then they broke through into the calm zone. Silence. The storm raged around them, but here, in this impossible pocket of peace, everything was still. I told you, Lyra said. And this time finally she smiled. The successful run through the Helix Nebula changed something between them. The wall that Lyra had built around herself developed cracks. Small ones at first, but cracks nonetheless. It started with simple things. Lyra began eating meals with Trevor in the common area instead of taking her food back to her cabin. She asked questions about the cargo jobs he was considering instead of just plotting whatever course he requested. She even laughed once when Trevor told a terrible joke about a Thorian who walked into a bar. The laugh surprised both of them. It was a light sound, almost like wind chimes. Trevor had not known Valeth could laugh like that. Sorry, Lyra said quickly, covering her mouth with her hand. Don't apologize for laughing, Trevor said. I was starting to think my jokes were actually that bad. They are that bad, Lyra said. But she was still smiling. Late one night, as they drifted through hyperspace on a long haul to the outer colonies, Trevor found Lyra in the common area staring out the viewport. She was moving her wings in slow, deliberate patterns. Up and down, side to side, little trembling motions that seemed to have meaning. What are you doing? Trevor asked. Lyra stopped immediately, folding her wings tight against her back. Nothing. Just thinking. Trevor sat down across from her. It didn't look like nothing. Your wings were moving like you were saying something. Lyra hesitated. We communicate with wing patterns. It's part of our language. I was just practicing. I haven't used it much since I left home. What were you saying? It's hard to translate. Something like missing home but not wanting to go back. Feeling grateful but also confused. Your human languages don't have words for some of these feelings. Trevor leaned forward, interested. Can you teach me some? I mean, I don't have wings, but maybe I can learn to read what you're saying. Lyra looked surprised. You want to learn Valeth wing speak? Why not? We're partners. Seems like I should understand when you're communicating. So Lyra taught him. She showed him how a quick upward flutter meant happiness or agreement. How a slow downward sweep indicated sadness or disagreement. How rapid trembling meant fear or excitement depending on the context. Trevor could not reproduce the movements, but he learned to read them. In return, Trevor tried to explain human idioms to Lyra. She found them baffling. "Why would you say it's raining cats and dogs?" she asked one day. "That makes no sense. Animals don't fall from the sky during precipitation. It's just an expression. It means it's raining really hard." "But why cats and dogs specifically? Why not raining rocks? That would at least be possible." Trevor laughed. "I don't know. That's just what humans say." Lyra's wings did a little flutter that Trevor now recognized as amusement. "Humans are very strange," says the person who navigates by reading invisible drift patterns in asteroid fields. "That's not strange. That's just paying attention." These conversations became a regular part of their routine. During long hyperspace jumps, they would sit in the common area and talk. About everything and nothing. About their lives before they met. About the strange quirks of different alien species they encountered. About dreams they had almost forgotten. Trevor learned that Lyra had wanted to be an explorer before her father got sick. She had studied stellar cartography not just as a skill but as a passion. She loved finding new routes through dangerous space, solving the puzzle of how to get from one point to another when the obvious path was blocked. Lyra learned that Trevor had bought the Wandering Star with money his grandfather left him. His family had wanted him to use it for university, to become something respectable like a doctor or an engineer. But Trevor loved the freedom of space. The independence of being his own boss. Even if it meant being alone most of the time. "Were you lonely?" Lyra asked one night. "Before I came aboard?" Trevor thought about it. "I didn't think I was. I convinced myself I liked being alone. But yeah, I guess I was lonely. I just didn't want to admit it." Lyra's wings moved in a pattern Trevor had learned meant understanding or empathy. "I was lonely too. Even surrounded by other contract workers. Maybe especially then. Being property is the loneliest thing in the universe." "You're not property anymore," Trevor said quietly. "I know. Sometimes I still forget though. I wake up and for a moment I think I'm still in the syndicate barracks. Then I remember where I am and who I'm with, and it feels like a dream." 3 months into their partnership, Trevor made a decision. They had been doing well with cargo runs. Lyra's navigation skills let them take jobs other haulers could not handle, and the pay was adding up. After covering their operating costs and making the payments on Lyra's contract debt, they had a decent amount left over. Trevor waited until Lyra was asleep, then accessed the secure banking terminal in his cabin. He pulled up the account information for the Viridian Medical Facility where Lyra's father had been treated. The remaining family debt was 42,000 credits. It would take Lyra's family decades to pay it off at their current rate. Trevor looked at their profit account. They had just enough to cover it. It would wipe out their savings, but they could rebuild. And Lyra's family would be free. He processed the payment anonymously. The transaction went through in seconds. 42,000 credits transferred. Debt cleared. He erased his access logs and went to bed. 2 weeks later, Lyra received a message on the secure comm channel. Trevor was in the cockpit running diagnostics when he heard her make a strange sound from the common area. He rushed back to find her staring at her personal data pad, her wings trembling violently. "What's wrong?" Trevor asked, worried she had gotten bad news. Lyra looked up at him. Her large eyes were wet. "My family's debt. The medical facility just sent confirmation. Someone paid it off. All of it. They're free." Trevor tried to look surprised. "That's amazing. Do they know who paid it?" "The payment was anonymous. They can't trace it." Lyra's voice was shaking. "Who would do this? Who would pay 42,000 credits for a family they've never met?" Trevor shrugged, keeping his expression neutral. "Maybe someone who knew your family. Or maybe just someone who heard about their situation and wanted to help." Lyra stood up, her wings spreading slightly. It was a gesture Trevor had learned meant strong emotion. "This means they don't owe anything anymore. The syndicate has no hold on them. My brothers won't have to take contracts. My parents can keep their home. They're actually free." "That's good," Trevor said. "That's really good." Lyra crossed the small space between them and did something she had never done before. She wrapped her wings around him in what Trevor realized was a Veilith embrace. She was shaking, and Trevor understood she was crying in the way her species cried. "I don't know who did this," Lyra said, her voice muffled against his shoulder. "But I owe them everything." Trevor carefully put his arms around her, trying not to disturb her wings. "Maybe you don't owe them anything. Maybe they just wanted to help because it was the right thing to do." They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet common area while the ship hummed around them. Trevor felt Lyra's wings against his back, soft and warm. He felt her breathing slow as she calmed down. When she finally pulled back, her wings did a pattern Trevor had never seen before. Complex and beautiful, full of meaning he could not quite translate. "What does that mean?" he asked. Lyra smiled, her eyes still wet. "It means you carry my song. And I carry yours. And we're both free." Trevor smiled back, wondering if she knew. Wondering if she had figured it out. But it did not matter. What mattered was the way she looked at him now. Not with the wariness of a freed slave looking at a former owner. But with something else. Something that felt like trust. Like friendship. Like family. The message from Lyra's family arrived 3 days after the debt confirmation. Trevor was running maintenance on the engine when Lyra came to find him, her data pad clutched in both hands. "My parents want me to come home," she said. Trevor looked up from the engine panel, wrench still in hand. Something cold settled in his chest. "Oh. They said now that the debt is paid, there's no reason for me to stay away. My father is recovered. They have enough saved to rebuild their lives. They want me back on the homeworld." Lyra's wings were folded tight, a position Trevor had learned meant she was trying to control her emotions. Trevor set down the wrench carefully. "That's good news. You must be happy." "I don't know what I am," Lyra said quietly. They stood in the engine room, surrounded by the mechanical heart of the wandering star. The ship that had brought them together. The ship they now owned as partners. Trevor wiped his hands on a rag, buying himself time to think. He had known this moment might come eventually. Of course Lyra would want to go home. Of course her family would want her back. She had sacrificed years of her life for them. Now she could finally return. "When do you want to leave?" Trevor asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Lyra looked at him, her large eyes searching his face. "That's it? You're not going to try to convince me to stay." "Why would I do that?" Trevor said. "You're free, Lyra. That was the whole point. You can go wherever you want. Be with your family. Start the life you were supposed to have before all this happened. But the ship. Our partnership. The debt payments." Trevor shook his head. "Don't worry about any of that. I'll figure it out. The debt was my choice, not yours. You don't owe me anything." Lyra's wings trembled. "I owe you everything. You bought my freedom. You gave me a partnership when you could have kept me as property. You treated me like an equal when no one else would." "That's not something you owe me for," Trevor said firmly. "That's just basic decency. You deserved all of it. You deserve to go home and be happy." "And what about you?" Lyra asked. "What will you do without a navigator?" Trevor forced a smile. "I managed before. I'll manage again. Maybe take easier jobs. Safer routes. I'll be fine." But even as he said it, Trevor knew it was not true. He would not be fine. Over the past months, Lyra had become more than just his navigator. She had become his partner in every sense. Someone to talk to during the long hyperspace jumps. Someone who understood the loneliness of space and the freedom it offered. Someone who laughed at his terrible jokes and taught him to read emotions and wing patterns. Someone he had grown to care about more than he wanted to admit. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Her wings moved in slow, complex patterns that Trevor had learned meant she was thinking deeply about something. "My parents sent coordinates for a passenger transport that stops near here in 2 weeks, she finally said. "They already booked passage for me. They're very eager for me to come home." 2 weeks, Trevor repeated. It felt both too long and not long enough. The next 13 days were strange. Trevor and Lyra continued their normal routine. They took cargo jobs. They ate meals together. They talked during the long jumps. But there was a weight to everything now. An awareness that their time together was ending. Trevor caught himself watching Lyra work at the navigation console, trying to memorize the way her fingers moved across the controls. The way she tilted her head when she was calculating a difficult trajectory. The way her wings would flutter slightly when she found an elegant solution to a routing problem. Lyra seemed to be doing the same thing. Trevor would turn around and find her looking at him, her expression difficult to read. Once he asked her what she was thinking and she just shook her head, her wings folding tight. On the 12th day they delivered a cargo load to a mining station in the Kepler system. The job went smoothly. Lyra navigated them through a tricky asteroid cluster that saved them 4 hours. Just like always. That night, Trevor found Lyra in the common area again, staring out the viewport at the stars. She was moving her wings in patterns he had never seen before. Complex sequences that seemed to tell a whole story. "Can't sleep?" Trevor asked. Lyra turned to look at him. "I've been thinking about something you said. About how you were lonely before I came aboard but didn't want to admit it. Trevor sat down across from her. What about it? I understand that feeling now. Before, when I was working for the syndicate, I thought I wanted to go home more than anything. I dreamed about it every night. Being with my family again. Walking in the forest where I grew up. Flying in open skies. Lyra's wings moved in a pattern that meant sadness mixed with confusion. But now that I can actually go home, I feel strange about it. Strange how? Like I'm not the same person who left. Like I've changed in ways that don't fit with who I used to be. Lyra looked out at the stars again. On my homeworld, I would work in the cartography offices. I would have a safe job making star charts for other people to use. I would see my family every day. I would follow all the proper Valeth traditions and expectations. That sounds nice, Trevor said, though his chest felt tight. It does sound nice, Lyra agreed. Safe and predictable and comfortable. Everything I thought I wanted. But Lyra's wings spread slightly, a gesture of frustration or maybe yearning. But I've spent the last months navigating impossible routes through asteroid fields and ion storms. I've solved problems that would make the cartography office computers crash. I've saved us from disasters a dozen times and you've never once questioned my judgment. You've treated me like I'm capable of anything. Because you are capable of anything, Trevor said. My family doesn't see me that way. They love me, but they see me as their daughter who needed saving. They'll always see me as someone who had to be rescued. They'll want to protect me and keep me safe and make sure I never have to take risks again. Trevor understood what she was not saying. And you don't want to be protected anymore. I want to be free, Lyra said. Really free. Not just free from the syndicate. Free to choose my own path. Free to take risks. Free to be the person I've become instead of the person I used to be. You can still have that at home, Trevor said, though he was not sure he believed it. You can show them who you've become. Lyra shook her head. It doesn't work that way. Valeth culture is very traditional. Once you have a place in society, that's your place. You don't change it. You don't challenge it. Especially not daughters from working families. They sat in silence for a while. Trevor wanted to ask her to stay. The words were right there, ready to be spoken. But he had meant what he said. Lyra deserved to make her own choice without pressure. Without obligation. Without guilt. Finally, Lyra spoke again. Can I ask you something? Anything. If I stayed, would you want me to stay? Not because you need a navigator. Not because of the partnership or the debt. But because you want me here. Trevor's heart was beating too fast. This was the question he had been avoiding asking himself. Because the answer scared him. Yes, he said quietly. I would want you to stay. These past months have been the best months I've had in years. Maybe ever. You're not just my navigator, Lyra. You're my friend. My partner. My family. And if you left, I would miss you every single day. Lyra's wings moved in that complex pattern again. The one that looked like a whole story being told. What does that mean? Trevor asked, gesturing to her wings. Lyra smiled. It means I'm not getting on that transport in 2 days. Trevor felt something break open in his chest. You're staying? I'm staying. Not because I owe you. Not because I'm afraid to go home. But because this is where I want to be. With you. On this ship. Finding impossible routes through dangerous space. This is my home now. Trevor stood up and crossed to her. He took her hands carefully, mindful of the cultural differences they were still learning. Are you sure? Your family will be disappointed. They'll understand eventually. I'll send them messages. Visit when we're in their sector. But I can't go back to being who I was before. I don't want to. Lyra's wings spread fully, a gesture of certainty and joy. I choose this life. I choose this partnership. I choose you. Trevor pulled her into an embrace, feeling her wings wrap around them both. They stood there in the common area of the wandering star, two beings from different worlds who had found something neither had been looking for. Freedom. Partnership. Family. Love. So what do we do now? Trevor asked. Lyra laughed, that wind chime sound he had grown to love. We find our next cargo job. We plot an impossible course. We argue about whether my navigation is too risky or your jokes are too terrible. We keep flying together. Sounds perfect, Trevor said. And it was.